Steven Universe and all associated images are property of Cartoon Network, Rebecca Sugar, and any and all other respective owners. I don't know them all. All footage in this video has been used for the purpose of critique parody under fair use. Please support the official release. 1 month ago, I did a video on Lapis Lazuli. That video changed my perspective on a lot of my thoughts that I've been having regarding theories regarding this show. In that video, I postulated that at some point, whether Lapis is Blue Diamond or half a Blue Diamond or simply another influential gem, Rose approached her asking for her assistance in accomplishing some strategy that would prevent the need for a war. Today we are going to talk about what I feel that strategy might have been. Now, please keep in mind that I do think that all of this was done for the greater good. I don't think Rose was evil or had sinister intentions. That being said, we have been given multiple references throughout the series to the fact that rose quartz had an affinity for plants. We know from the episode When It Rains that precipitation is either rare or entirely non-existent on Homeworld, which suggests that plant and animal life is likewise rare or non-existent on Homeworld. This means that it is very likely that Rose didn't discover her affinity for plant life until she went to another planet where it was more abundant, quite possibly Earth itself. And I don't think this is all that she discovered an affinity for. We know that she has some connection with Lion, and all of you should know by now from my video on Lion that I believe that Rose changed Lion to make him into what he is now, using an actual Earth Lion as the base. I think that Rose has a similar affinity for animals, one that was never made as apparent to the other crystal gems as her affinity for plants was. I know this is a bit of a logical leap, but Lion's mere existence suggests to me that it's true. I think that Rose happened upon these powers over flora and fauna completely by accident. I don't think that she foresaw these abilities or that she planned for them, but I think that once she discovered them, she saw an opportunity. Imagine this. Homeworld was, long ago, a life-sustaining planet until over-kindergartening drained its life away until, in order to continue to reproduce, the gems had to branch out to other life-sustaining worlds. They would colonize these worlds and then use them up just as they had their own, one after another. Rose didn't like this, but the gems had yet to encounter a planet with other sentient life forms, so there was no need for her to take drastic measures. Then the gems came upon Earth and humanity. Perhaps the gems didn't see humans as sentient, or they simply didn't care about them, but either way, Rose clearly saw something in humanity and took to humans. And even as she carried out her duties on Earth, I think she protested heavily against kindergartening the planet. There is only one reason I can think of why Homeworld would insist on continuing kindergartening the planet, despite the protestations of a gem as powerful as Rose, and that is because planets suitable for kindergartening are rare, and the gems have no other way of reproducing. So, given this situation, what could Rose do to spare humanity? She could fight, but I imagine that such a thing as civil war amongst gems at the time was unheard of. Still, I think this would have been Rose's first and only recourse had she not discovered her power over plants and animals. She could create living servant soldiers from Earth plants. What if she decided to go one step further and attempt to create gem life from plants and animals, offering Homeworld an alternative method of reproduction? This may seem far-fetched, but look at the evidence. We see that the moss from Lars and the Cool Kids, when it blooms into flowers, has gemstones inside the flowers. Gemstones which seem to be crude reproductions of the rose quartz gemstone. There's also, well, Lion himself, and the lizard that Lion is eating in Lion 2, the movie, which has a meaty physical body, but also seems to have gemstones growing down its back. Not to mention the Heaven and Earth beetles, which have bodies entirely different than any other gem we've ever seen, including corrupted gems. Their bodies seem to be that of genuine insects that just happen to have gemstones embedded into them. Not only that, but these two gems were seemingly brought together to breed, which is something that gems just don't do. It is obvious to me that Rose was attempting to create organic gem hybrids as a means of convincing Homeworld that there was an alternative to kindergartens that didn't endanger the host world. Now, this is some macabre Dr. Frankenstein stuff. After all, it's unlikely that Rose could go all that far trying to reproduce her own gemstone. She would have eventually needed additional gem samples to use in her experiments, and she would have to get them from somewhere. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think she killed other gems or anything, but we know from Fribo that gem fragments are often repurposed after the gem's death. What if Rose took fragments of gems that had become shattered, and used them in her experiments, attempting to create new gem creatures by merging the data stored on those fragments with the DNA of Earth plants and animals, but she never succeeded in creating a sentient gem. With nothing concrete to show to Homeworld and no support from whatever potential allies she might have had within the ruling class, Rose had no other option to save the planet but to fight. She knew there were many gems who longed to be more than cogs in the machine that was Homeworld, and Rose was sympathetic to their desires. She offered them sanctuary on Earth once it was liberated, and these gems became the first crystal gems. They became dedicated to making the Earth into a place where gem society could begin anew as something better. I find it unlikely, however, that Rose would have shared the nature of her experiments with others. To use just one example, she saw how much her trusted Pearl idolized her, and so she kept the nature of her experiments from Pearl for Pearl's perceived protection. She knew that if Pearl learned the truth, it would shatter her perception of Rose forever. I think she would have had similar motivation for keeping the true nature of her experiments from most, if not all, of her other soldiers as well. However, there was one crystal gem that she would have had no choice but to share the truth with, and that's Garnet. After all, we know from dialogue in We Need to Talk that Rose would often use Garnet's future vision to guide her. Garnet would have discovered the truth on her own either way, so there was no point not to tell her. Despite what Pearl allowed herself to believe, it was Garnet who was Rose's sole confidant. It was Garnet who knew Rose's secrets. After the war, Rose remained on Earth with the few surviving crystal gems. She continued her experiments as best she could, which most likely just involved upkeeping them. And somewhere deep in her mind, I think she knew that Homeworld would return. I have no idea what she intended to do, if she even had a plan, but I do think that a pivotal moment in her life changed everything. Realize that while not blameless, Rose and the other leaders of Homeworld are as much a victim of societal conditioning as any of the lower class gems. Just as Pearl was bred and conditioned to think herself inferior and to behave as the perfect servant, Rose would have been bred and conditioned to think herself superior to others and to be the ideal leader. This explains why empathy comes so hard to her, why she seems to have just assumed that Amethyst, a quote-unquote loyal warrior, would follow Rose's doctrine, and why she never took Pearl's feelings for her seriously. She's simply wired that way. It also substantiates my conclusion that Rose would have been able to confide more in Garnet. Garnet is a being with no pre-designated purpose on Homeworld. It would have been far easier for Rose to see Garnet as something more like an equal. Rose cared for her crystal gems, I'm not arguing that. I do believe that she wanted something better for them, but she could never truly escape who it was that she was made to be. Until she met Greg. Again, referencing We Need to Talk, notice how Greg is quite possibly the very first person ever to treat Rose as another person, rather than something to be looked up to or admired. I think through her interactions with Greg, Rose realized her bias, that she still, despite herself, was unable to treat others as her equals. She realized that if peace were ever to be achieved with Homeworld and a better way found, someone else would have to take charge. Someone with Rose's abilities, but also Greg's kindness, free of all of Rose's biases and conditioning. While I believe the crew that Rose had Steven because she wanted to experience pregnancy, there had to be more to it. A gem's holographic body can become a perfect simulation of whatever biological process that gem wants. She could have simulated a pregnancy. She didn't have to die for it. The only reason she would have died to become Steven was because she realized that only a new being, a being free of Homeworld's influence, could bridge the gap that Rose never could. She believed so much in her unborn son and his future that she gave all that she was to become half of him, to give him a chance at bringing Homeworld and humanity together. And he's already begun to succeed. He has strong connections with the humans in town, despite living apart from them. He's befriended Lapis and Peridot, and he even shows promise in someday helping the corrupted gems in ways that Rose never could. In the end, Rose succeeded in creating a better gem, one who could pave the way for a better world, and his name is Steven Universe. But that's not all. While it is clear that Rose left Lion behind to aid Steven, I think that she left him a second, more subtle guide. But we'll address that 1 month from today, in the conclusion to the conspiracy series, The Garnet Conspiracy.